What if someone offered you a deal that would allow you to cheat death itself? Would you take that deal? What if in exchange they asked for something equally valuable, like your voice or your soul? This is the question that haunted a young woman who received an enigmatic gift from her late mother. The story goes back to 1974, when a Japanese woman named Reiko Tamai passed away after contracting pneumonia. Her grieving husband, Kiyoshi Tamai, was left to raise their 4-year-old daughter alone. But it wasn't just a daughter he was looking after. He was also caring for a cat. A few weeks after his wife's funeral, Tosa found their cat wandering outside. It seemed confused and scared. He assumed it must have gotten lost, or worse, injured, and unable to return home on its own. After searching for a bit, Tosa couldn't find the missing feline and he started to worry. Just then, their daughter Eriko came running towards him, holding the cat in her arms. "I found her," she said proudly. "She was hiding under this big rock." Toshi was relieved, but he noticed something strange. His wife had always called their cat Tama, and yet here was Eriko holding the same cat and calling it Ash. When Toshi asked his daughter about it, she replied, "That's not Tama, that's Ash. She told me so." At first, Toshi thought this was all just a silly misunderstanding. Maybe their daughter was just too distraught over losing her mother. But as the days passed, it became clear that there was more to this story. Not only did Eriko insist that the cat's name was Ash, but she also claimed it had spoken to her. The cat apparently told her that she had to do something very important or bad things would happen to her family. Specifically, it warned her that her father would die in a car accident. To say that Toshi was skeptical is a bit of an understatement. While he loved his daughter dearly, he didn't believe for a second that their pet cat could talk. Furthermore, he couldn't imagine why a cat would warn them about such a thing. Still, out of respect for his deceased wife and his daughter's well-being, Toshi decided to take precautions. So he simply started driving less. The months went by, and Toshi's accident avoidance paid off. He remained safe and sound while Eriko and Ash continued to communicate. One day, Ash told the girl that her father would be involved in another accident, unless he made a visit to a shrine in the mountains. Once again, Toshi was dubious, but he figured it couldn't hurt to pay the shrine a visit. Maybe it was the grief talking, but he didn't want to risk any potential accidents. However, once he arrived at the shrine, everything changed. As Toshi prayed before the deity, the wind suddenly picked up, and a crow landed on his shoulder. At that moment, the crow spoke to him in a raspy voice and told him that he was being watched. Startled, Toshi turned around to see an old woman standing behind him. She introduced herself as the guardian of the mountain shrine, and explained that she had been watching him. Apparently, she'd been observing him for quite some time. Before he could ask her what she was talking about, she handed him a small box. With trembling hands, he opened it to find a beautiful silver amulet. It was intricately designed with swirling patterns and a single red jewel embedded in the center. The old woman explained that this was an Ash Amulet of Izanami, a powerful artifact that could protect its owner from harm. But she warned that it came at a great cost. The amulet was linked to the realm of the dead, and by accepting its protection, he would be signing a contract with Izanami, the goddess of the Underworld. If Izanami deemed him worthy, he would gain immense power and influence. However, if she found him unworthy, he would lose his soul and become a vessel for her demonic energy. Toshi knew he was at a crossroads. On one hand, he had the chance to become incredibly powerful, but the risks were just too great. Could he trust Izanami, the ruler of the Underworld, to honor her end of the bargain? Or would he be signing his own demise? In the end, common sense prevailed, and Toshi declined the offer. He thanked the old woman for her generosity and returned home without the amulet. In the following days, Toshi felt uneasy. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. Then one night, His worst fears were confirmed. As he slept, he was pulled into a dark and gloomy realm, where he met the terrifying figure of Izanami herself. She was draped in black robes, her face hidden behind a veil. With a voice like grinding stones, she reminded him of the amulet he had rejected. "You rejected my gift, mortal," she boomed. "But I am Izanami, and I always get what I want." And with that, she lunged for him, her clawed fingers digging into his flesh. Toshi awoke with a gasp, his heart pounding in his chest. Was that a dream or a vision of things to come? Despite his unease, Toshi tried to dismiss the incident as a nightmare. But as days turned into weeks, the nightmares persisted, growing more vivid and terrifying. One day, he noticed that his daughter Eriko had been acting strange. She had become distant and withdrawn, spending long hours alone in her room. Concerned, Toshi tried to talk to her, but she would only shut down, her eyes filled with a disturbing emptiness. Toshi's attempts to connect with his daughter only made things worse. It seemed as though she were living in a world of her own, her mind somewhere far away. This worried him greatly, for he knew that whatever was happening to her had nothing to do with the amulet. His daughter had never once mentioned it to him. Did Izanami's presence have something to do with this? Was she slowly corrupting Eriko's mind? As the situation grew more desperate, Toshi decided to seek help from the old woman at the mountain shrine. But much to his dismay, she was nowhere to be found. The shrine was deserted, its doors sealed tight, as if abandoned. He was devastated. Why had the old woman vanished just when he needed her the most? He returned home, defeated, not knowing that Izanami's true plan was unfolding right before his eyes. Meanwhile, Eriko's condition worsened. She became increasingly detached from reality, often staring blankly into space, her eyes devoid of life. The vibrant, lively girl he had known seemed to be fading away, replaced by a hollow shell. It was as if Izanami had cast a spell on her, slowly draining her of her humanity. And then, one night, everything changed. Toshi woke up to the sound of blood-curdling screams. Rushing to Eriko's room, he found her sitting on the floor, her body shaking violently. Her eyes, wide and filled with terror, stared straight ahead, as if she were witnessing something horrible. As he held her close, trying to soothe her, Toshi realized that this was no ordinary nightmare. This was a glimpse into his daughter's soul, a manifestation of the terror that Izanami had unleashed upon her. The next morning, Eriko seemed different. She looked pale and drawn, as if the life had been sucked out of her. When Toshi asked her about the previous night's episode, she only shook her head, her eyes filled with fear and sadness. Days turned into nights, and Eriko's condition continued to deteriorate. She grew weaker with each passing hour, her body wasting away as if she were being consumed by a terrible disease. Toshi watched helplessly as his daughter, the embodiment of joy and life, slowly withered away. He knew that Izanami was behind this, that she was feeding on his daughter's life force. But how could he stop her? Desperate for a solution, Toshi sought out the one person who might be able to help him, the old woman from the shrine. After a long and arduous journey, he finally found her, living in a secluded hut deep in the forest. She listened patiently to his tale, her expression grave and concerned. Finally, she spoke, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. She informed him that the only way to save his daughter was to make a deal with his army, but it wouldn't be an easy one. To break Izanami's hold over Eriko, Toshi would have to offer her something precious in exchange, something that would bind him to the Underworld forever. And with that, the old woman vanished, leaving Toshi to ponder his options. With his daughter's life hanging in the balance, Toshi had to make a choice. What was he willing to sacrifice to save Eriko? And what exactly did Izanami want from him? You'll find out in part 2.